So here we are, the two of us, the co-hosts, and you may have noticed I've shortened the intro. It just gets the job done more quickly. How the devil are you, Tersia?
I'm well, John. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Yep.
Good, good, good.
So,
You can see
so we.
I'm onto long sleeves, so I'm happy because it's
Oh,
we have
cool.
our first autumn weather. It's
Yeah.
cool, and I made soup tonight for supper. You guys are moving into spring, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yes, we
So
are. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
John, we
it's
don't have a guest tonight.
we don't. Unfortunately, no. We did have a guest, but he sort of got cold feet. It's not everyone wants to be seen on a screen, and he thought about it and decided he was one of those who didn't, which is fair enough.
Yes, and it's not just seeing oneself on screen. I mean, that's bad enough. It takes some getting used to. Well, I think one needs a certain amount of I'm not sure if it's arrogance or ignorance or no cariness or whatever. One needs to let go of it, of much of the ego to
Hmm.
appear on screen, and I find many people are uncomfortable with that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I have my kids in my tutor center.
Yeah.
I have them read to themselves and
Mm.
record their own reading. I mean, they don't, they go somewhere private, and
Yes.
I just ask them to record their own reading and listen back to themselves.
Yes.
And you'll be surprised how many of them, they just can't, they tell me straight up, they will not record themselves and they will not listen,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if it's just them
Yeah.
listening to themselves. They just,
Well,
so
mm.
we must be a bit crazy, you and I, or
I,
just
I've
maybe,
got a theory. I've got a
yes.
theory why we're like this. And I remember being extremely old. We were talking last week about how I can remember back to the 1300s.
Yes, of course.
I'm not going to forgive you for that in a hurry. But the thing is, I can remember back to before recorded sound, commonly recorded sound. There were recording machines that radio stations had, but you and I didn't have access to our own voices played back. And
Well, John, I'm a bit younger than you, so I actually had one of those. My mom had one of those recorders that you had play, stop, pause, record, fast forward, and rewind. So,
yes,
so, so I'm yes,
was it real to real? Was it?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yes.
yes. Those cassette tapes, those.
The cassettes. Are you seeing that there was big reels before there was cassettes?
Oh no, I was a child when we had the small
Mm, mm,
the cassettes, but the
mm.
audio. I mean, audio only. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Mm.
those flat box-like things, and you press the button, and a
Yes,
little
yes,
flag would pop up, and yeah,
yes,
those.
yes. A
But
row of five buttons. Yes, I remember
that's
them.
right. Get back
Yeah.
to your hypothesis. I rudely interrupted you.
Yeah. Well, you see, back in those days when we first heard our own voices, it was a bit of a shock because hearing your voice recorded and played back is different from the way you hear it as you speak it, because you hear it through your head, mostly through the bones of your head, and sound travels differently than it does through the air and bouncing off things and going down a microphone and coming out of a loudspeaker. So naturally, it's different and stranger. And so some people were a bit put off by that. But the reason I think you and I don't mind putting ourselves in front of a camera and a microphone is because we're teachers.
Yes, I agree. Because at heart, all teachers are actually performers.
Yes, yes.
Some of us are just not quite good enough to make it on stage,
Mm.
and get Oscar awards. We just have to make do with
Well,
with
we're
younger and smaller
yeah,
audiences.
we're, we're
That's
we're different from actors, but we are performers because that's our
yes.
job. Getting up and standing facing the other way from an audience that's looking at you, and then spouting out and telling them stuff.
Yep.
The difference between us and actors is we're trying to impart information or how to do something. And
Mm.
actors are just playing a part. They're doing the lines that they were given.
Well. You see, this is what we do. We planned to talk about. So, just for our audience, when we realized that we wouldn't have a guest, I said to John, well, I've been following this American philosopher, whose name I have now absolutely promptly forgotten, Brennan, I think. He's actually, he wrote a book about democracy some 4 or 5 years ago. And I found his ideas about the flaws in democracy. I find them very interesting. And I said, let's talk about democracy. And then John went ahead, and being a typical male, he said, no, let's talk about sex. And now
that is a misrepresentation.
But now we're talking about acting and presenting. So
yeah.
we've gone in the space of 5 minutes. We've gone from thinking that we're going to do one thing, and we ended up talking about something totally different. But I do want to, I know we said we were going to talk about sex, and I promise you we will get there. But
oh, you're such a tease.
Sorry?
You're such a tease.
Isn't there a song? Let's talk about sex, baby. Well, sex is yes, no, there is definitely. You can look it up while I tell you about the story. So, obviously, I'm in South Africa, and I would like to get more of my fellow South Africans listening, watching us. Fellow South Africans is a phrase, or actually, we heard that during COVID, our president started each. We had these things during COVID that were called family meetings, and President Ramaphosa would begin each of them with "my fellow South Africans." So it's sort of like a phrase. You won't understand, but
ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, but in South Africa, the president says, "my fellow South Africans." So my fellow South Africans, and anybody from the UK, the United States, Finland, Sweden, wherever you are listening to us, I want to just make you aware of what is happening in South Africa. And this happened since Thursday. Nothing has happened really, but talking about listening to one's own voice and seeing oneself on camera or on a screen. One of the best authors in South Africa wrote a book about the missionaries that came to South Africa in the 1700s, and one of the main character is a San bushman, and in the story it comes about that he's converted to Christianity, and he has this conflict between his traditional beliefs and then Christianity. But there's one scene where he sees a mirror for the first. He sees his own reflection in a mirror, and he gets the fright of his life. And I know that several primitive tribes, the ones that were still uncontacted by Western society in the 20s and 30s, they would not have themselves be photographed, because there's this idea that if you so to see an image of yourself in a mirror, it's almost as if your spirit has gone into animated, and it captures your spirit. And that belief and those types of beliefs fascinate me, especially because one would expect that in the 21st century those beliefs wouldn't have much influence on people's lives. But in South Africa, there's a possibility. Well, there's a possibility that Taylor Swift might come to South Africa. I don't know if you have heard that.
Yes.
And now, front news of all the newspapers.
Breaking.
She's a witch. I just want to tell you.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes, Taylor Swift is a witch. Yeah. She's evil. She's an agent of Satan. There are social media videos warning people, and it's a real thing. It's captured the media. It's captured people. Taylor Swift, and I don't know if they're going to try and prevent her from. So it's just so interesting how these very old beliefs that we hold about essence and spirit, and that that we have some sort of essence, and that it can be taken out of us, and we can be possessed, and
Mm.
it's still alive and well. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've interviewed a person who specializes in studying how the brain makes up this stuff, and his name is Professor Chris French, and he's
I watched that interview. It was the one
yeah,
where I was not available. It was brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
I think we should get him on again to talk about Taylor Swift and the devil.
Well, let me tell you, yes, I think we should warn Taylor Swift not to go to South Africa. She may be burnt at the stake.
No, I think she'll be fine because she has a very large safety
Yes, yes.
consignment. But apparently she has such an effect that she could possibly save South Africa's straining economy. So I
Oh,
think
yeah,
she should come absolutely tomorrow if possible.
yeah, yes, yes. You will benefit financially as a country from her arrival, definitely.
Apparently, so it is said. But that's because she's an agent of Satan. Because
Yeah, definitely.
there are no wealthy Christian pastors. Satan makes money, and God, Jesus, aspires to poverty. So
Well, how does this? What about what was his name? He died recently. He was Nigerian. The richest uh, tele televangelist or uh, pastorpreneur. There's various phrases.
oh,
There
I
is,
love that word, pastorpreneur.
yeah. There's
That's nice.
various expressions for them. They are very rich, especially the American ones. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
wanted to say a bit more about Chris French, and I also wanted to say a bit more about witches because I had a conversation on Facebook recently because I put up a quote from Justin Brierley. Now,
I,
Justin,
I'm familiar with Justin's program. What are the chances we'd get him on our show?
well, he doesn't make that program anymore. Other
It's still
people,
going though. He's not the host, but the program still goes
yes,
on.
yes. The program is called Unbelievable, and it's on a radio station. Um,
Premier Christian Radio.
That's the one, Premier Christian Radio. I've been on it many years ago. I was interviewed on it by Justin. He's a lovely guy. And the thing is that he made a quote about Easter. He said, I believe that dead things can come back to life.
Oh, okay.
After all, that's the purpose of the story, isn't it? He said. And of course it is. That's the purpose of
It is.
Easter.
It is.
So I put that quote up. I put it onto my Twitter or somewhere. I put, I believe, in quotation marks, I believe that dead things can come back to life. Who said that? Justin Brearley. And you should have seen the thread that followed it, including, was it this thread or another one? It might have been another thread when I'd raised the prospect of there being no witches and no aliens and things like this, with no evidence for any of these things. And quite a few Americans who I spar with in these media channels, they came on and said, "Oh, witches are real. They're still there today in America."
Oh! I thought that gives me, in a bizarre way, it gives me hope for the world, because I thought it was only in Africa that people still held these what I see as primitive beliefs. And I just want to qualify. I understand where those beliefs come from. I mean, as a child, I distinctly remember I was in my mid-teens, and I had a fear of what was under my bed, because in
Yeah,
those
yeah.
days the beds didn't have bases. We had the it wasn't a solid closed base, so there was actually, it was this dark space under your bed.
Yes.
And long before I was afraid of snakes or spiders, or which those are quite common, it wouldn't be unusual,
No.
but it's entirely possible that a snake can be hidden under your bed.
Hmm.
But I wasn't afraid of snakes or things like that. I was afraid of some creature that would grab my ankles as I stepped up to the bed. So I launched myself into my bed from about 1.5 meters away, because obviously the
Yeah.
supernatural being is limited by the length of arms, you know. So there's this supernatural being that lives under my bed,
Yes.
um, but can't reach beyond 1.5 meters. So if I it's so illogical, and I'm very
Well,
grateful that I grew out of that, and I'm grateful that I grew out of that, because the amount of unnecessary fear
mm,
that I experienced, having waking up from a nightmare, and then knowing that I could go to my parents' room, they would comfort me, because we get nightmares. I still get nightmares, but now I'm too scared to walk to my parents' bedroom, and that because I'm just too scared to get out of my bed and switch on the light, and lying there just rigid with fear. Imagine if I had the ability at that age to reason myself out of that. I would have. Hello, James. It's nice to see you. Welcome.
yeah. Do you want
I'm
to
not
join?
wearing.
Do you want to join us, James? Are you in front of a camera and a microphone? I can send you the link.
Okay, so James, let us know if you want to receive the link. But what you said just now about raising the dead reminds me, and it's maybe a segue into what we wanted to talk about. We decided to talk about sex, and it's not sex as in the sex act that
No.
we wanted to talk about. It's differences
Yeah.
between the sexes that
Hmm.
we wanted to talk about. But
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a catchy phrase, John. Come on, everybody uses clickbait. So let's talk about sex, baby. I mean, that's so there's a joke. I don't recall the joke, and I won't pretend to remember it. But I know the catchphrase, or the punchline is it's about Viagra, and it's about this old elderly couple, and then the husband. So I'm remaking the story, but the punchline is the husband convinces his elderly wife, that they should invest in some Viagra because it might spice things up. And she says, "Dear, uh, it can only it can only revive temporarily. It can't raise things from the dead."
Yeah. Well, of course,
So,
the thing is, if you want to take Viagra, you mustn't take it while you've got a sore throat, because if it gets stuck before it's gone down properly, all you get is a stiff neck.
yes, well, all right. So have you checked out the channel Old Jews, or yeah, I'm not sure if it's old Jews or just Jews telling jokes.
No, but I know Jewish jokes are very good.
But there's actually a YouTube channel. It's Old Jews telling jokes, or just Jews telling jokes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's absolutely hilarious. So if you're having a bad day, and many of those jokes concern obviously the sexes and relationships between men and women. So, John, why did you want to talk about sex tonight?
Oh, look,
Okay,
James is saying he can't join us today, but he would love to come another day. Well, that's kind. Thanks, James. Maybe we'll give you a heads up in future and get you ready. Okay. Thank
please,
you.
James, let us know. You know how to contact us, I hope.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So John, it's just you and I. No threesomes tonight.
Sex, then. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about is the difference, because a lot of people at the moment are trying to deny that there is a difference. You know, there's all this hyper equality, and identity doubt. You know, people are denying that you can be you can determine your gender. Some people are saying I can choose what sex I am, and other people are saying no, you can't. And I don't really want to get into the trans debate, but is there a difference between the sexes, and if so, what is it?
Okay, the first difference that I would like to point out is the differences between the let's clarify terminology. So there's a difference between sex and gender. So I define, and I think that is a fairly accepted definition in academia. I would say when I talk about sex, as in male or female, that is a biological phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also qualify, no, not qualify, that is a biological phenomenon that is manifested on a spectrum. So as a biologist, you might be able to enlighten us on that. But I do know that in terms of gametes, I don't know, I don't really understand it, but I don't understand it well enough to explain it to somebody else. But I do know that it's more fluid. Even the expression of sexuality, not that's just so even the expression of male and female exists on a scale, because one gets they in the olden days they were called hermaphrodites. So you can get a baby that is born with a penis as well as ovaries, etc. And we do know that that they correspond, and that initially the fetus is sexless in some ways. So I'm talking here as a total ignorant person. I don't know how it works. The fact of the matter is it's complicated, and the expression of sex, as in male or female, is on a spectrum. Most people fall on either side. I think it's about 10% to maybe 15% of the population that fall on the spectrum of the biological spectrum. They manifest with possibly both sets of genitalia. So can we talk to that for a minute?
It's much fewer. Yeah, the thing is, there are various levels to sexuality. There's the DNA or chromosomal level, and then that determines X and Y of the zygote, and how the embryo subsequently develops. And every embryo starts out being female until male hormones start to influence the development, and some of them then about 53%, in fact, turn into male babies.
Okay.
But then, so there's genetics, there's development. After birth, there can be cultural impact.
Okay, that's what most academics distinguish as gender.
Yeah.
So for clarity's sake, I think it's important that we make that distinction, that
But
there's
then,
the biological sexing, let's call it that,
yeah,
and then the cultural expression
yeah.
is gender. And most of the time, it corresponds.
Well, I wanted to go on a bit because junior kids, let's call them, kids up to junior school age, they're asexual. They haven't fully developed. I mean, they know which sex they belong to, and they have been dressed accordingly by their parents, But then at puberty, of course, there's a big upsurge of sex hormones, and the secondary sexual characteristics kick in. And it's only at that stage that we really differentiate into fully male and fully female. So, I mean, I see that
I disagree, John. I don't think that younger kids are asexual. I think they are extremely aware of.
aware. Yes, but not functioning.
No, obviously not functioning. Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And they don't participate in sex. Although, so when I was thinking about our upcoming conversation,
Hmm.
I thought about this distinction, that I find the distinction between sexing, let's call it sexing, and gender. I find it very useful. And I mentioned to you that Frans de Waal, who I found out from you guys, sadly, that he passed away on the 14th of March already. And
Yeah.
I had such high hopes of actually having him on our show. I
Hmm.
actually sent him an
Yeah.
email, and he responded. It was about
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
year ago. He said that he would love to, but he was too busy at that
Hmm.
stage, and then I never got round to asking him again. But
Yeah. Yeah.
his most recent book is about gender and sexuality.
Hmm.
I haven't read it, but I've heard him talk about it,
Hmm.
and that it is a topic that I think we need to talk about more, especially like you said when we started talking about it. There is in the current discourse this idea that you can you can choose your gender identity, and I have very ambivalent thoughts about that, because on the one
Well,
hand, yes, you can, but I don't believe in free will, so it's not a choice. I don't think it's a conscious choice. I think you go with what you experience,
well,
and
I wanted to
so
clear up. I wanted to clear up a few things that you said earlier about there being a spectrum and a 10 or 15%. Which level are you thinking of there? Because you see, if you go to the genetic level, it's really strongly binary. There's no spectrum. And hermaphrodites are vanishingly infrequent. And even the chromosomal abnormalities, like X naught or XXY or XYY, add them all together, and it's less than 1% of the population. It's 0.2%. These are, apologies if any are watching us now, but these are genetic defects in the same way that, trisomic 27 is. So the sex is more binary than almost anything else. Everything else is a range. There's a spectrum of colors, there's a range of temperatures, there's a range of pressures. Everything
I,
else, everything else is a range, but sex at that level isn't.
I stand corrected about the percentage. You're right, and yes, I agree. It, and I don't think anybody has a problem with that. And uh, I I'm perfectly. I think that the problem comes in when people start to talk about and think about their expression of their
Mm,
gender identity. And I
mm,
really don't think that we should make that close connection that we do in Western society between gender and sex, as in male female. I think it is a trap that Western society has fallen into, because there are many societies and cultures, especially of but prior to being colonized, where there's a prevalence of accepting that there are different expressions of gender. I
sure.
know, for example, in some indigenous American societies,
Mm,
that they were it was the accepted norm that you had males and you had females, and then you had the in between people,
yeah.
and some of them were males who they had the biological male attributes, but
Mhm.
they expressed themselves as females, and
Yes,
that's
yes.
different. And I think that's where we've painted ourselves into a corner as far as the discourse goes,
Yeah.
because
Well, what's happened is culture it veers from being tolerant to being intolerant. And there are periods in history when it was recognized that there was quite a sizable proportion of the population that would be homosexual. The Romans recognized it, and they even created their own. They caused eunuchs to be produced, didn't they? Because they liked their castrati voices. So,
well, I would put that in it, that causing eunuchs to that's something different in my opinion. But I also want to say that I don't think having a different gender identity is not the same as being homosexual. I have a brother who's homosexual, but he's definitely male and he identifies as male. So you see, we already have 4 levels to this conversation. We have the biological aspect of it, male, female. Then we have the sexuality aspect, as in to what gender am I attracted to? And then we have the expression of gender. And I want to just get back to, okay, sorry, what do you say to that?
well, you're right.
Do you agree?
But what I was going on to say was that there's a period at the moment where we seem to have, tolerance has gone out of the window. You know, thanks to social media, we've all become algorithmically reinforced in our biases. And so we occupy our own niches now, and in our niche, we don't want gays. I'm not speaking personally here.
Yes.
I'm speaking figuratively about, some people who have gone in that route, that cultural distance, cultural direction. They have ended up being intolerant towards some of the varieties of sexual expression.
Yes, and of course, I think about 30 years ago, it was against homosexuality. We've now become, as a society, as a whole, I think more people are more accepting of homosexuality. But now, the idea of gender expression, as in, I have the biological characteristics of a female, but I would like to express that as that I'm male. That is the current conversation, and it's a big thing, which is complete. Well, I think it's completely unnecessary to make it a thing.
Yeah.
Because
it's only become a big thing thanks to technology like this. Previously, there was no way of announcing yourself to the world as what you feel you are, and exciting a thread of interest, either confirming or denying that that's okay.
Well, yes, but I also think that we have become more. The general zeitgeist is that it's okay to express oneself. I think even with so social media just magnifies it, but 20 years ago, I didn't know that there were such things as people who preferred to have relationships with people of the same sex. I was so ignorant. I didn't know that. I really, growing up in growing up in apartheid South Africa.
You had a sheltered upbringing, didn't you?
I did, absolutely, and also politically, socially. I mean, I grew up in a time where, under Christian national education, that was the law of the land. In fact, when I was 13 years old, we had a year-long state of emergency. We had massive press. We didn't have a free press. We were indoctrinated by church and state. We weren't. It wasn't a communist country by any means, but we were indoctrinated, and there was. So if you were different, you were outcast. And I think it wasn't only in South Africa. We were just more extremely so, and I think we sort of 20 years behind the rest of the world. So we are. But what I'm trying to say is that I think there's a general openness to
Now there is.
expressing oneself in any case.
Yes.
And I really think that this idea of free expression has given people who are not comfortable with the traditional expression of gender are encouraged to be themselves. And the funny thing is that I don't see that as a threat. Many parents, and I've had interviews with parents, that they one of the first things they ask me is, what is your stance on gender expression or the transgender agenda? That's what I've been asked. What is your opinion on the transgender agenda? And I don't think there is a transgender agenda. I really don't think so, because a person who is comfortable with who they are in terms of their gender and sexual expression, the chances of me convincing them, let's say I had a transgender agenda, I can't turn any person who doesn't have certain inclinations to express themselves in certain ways. There's no ways I can influence them to do it differently.
And it would be presumptuous of you to wish to do so, surely.
Absolutely, but even if it would be absolutely presumptuous. But even if I wanted to, for whatever reason, I don't think it's possible.
No.
And that's why I don't think that there should be this fear of the transgender agenda. And
it's the usual story, because these so-called agendas, it's fine to be what you want to be, and it's not fine to impose your predilections on other people. End of.
Absolutely, but I don't think that there is the desire by anybody to impose transgender agenda on anybody. Do you think there is?
Well, what about all this I go by these pronouns business then? That's...
I don't think that's an imposition. So,
except that they're pushing for sharing the toilets, and that there's been a number of rapes in the female toilets by men who went in pretending to be women. And
the thing is, no, a man who wants to rape a woman doesn't have to pretend to be a woman and go into the women's toilets.
Well, it doesn't have to, no, but it's an easy way of finding women.
How often? I don't think it's so. I'd like to see stats on that. I don't think that is a real threat. For example, in many parts of Europe, there are no genderized toilets.
Yeah.
It's one room, and you have cubicles, and you go into the cubicle.
Yeah.
It's been like, well, I was in Greece in 1991, and it was like I walked around looking for the female toilets for about an hour until I asked somebody, and they said, "What are you talking about? There's a toilet. It's a building. Yes. You go in there, and there are cubicles."
Yes.
So why can't we just do the same? And living in a country, I just want to say, I don't think that's a strong enough argument, because in my country we have strict genderized bathrooms, and we have the highest incidence of rape, I think, in the world. 1 in 6 women will be raped in South Africa. And we have very strict segregation of toilets. So I as far as pronouns go, I think all that people are requesting is, let's just not think in terms of he, him, she, her. If you want to be called they, them, how does that impose on me? If I tell you I don't want to be called Tunny, so just I picked up a package this week, and the person behind the counter looked to me to be about my age, right?
Mhm.
And in Afrikaans, we have this thing where sometimes people are addressed as Tannie, which is aunt, but it's not aunt as in your relative.
Mhm.
Well, I suppose you have an auntie so and so.
Yeah.
So
Not a
and
yeah.
this person addressed me as Tannie. I was absolutely disgusted. In fact, I was so offended, and I don't normally get offended because I mean, age to me it's not a thing, and I am getting grey, and but to me that was worse than being called they them, and that's I think what people are trying to do. People who have some sort of gender conflict, all they're asking is, don't refer to me as he him because you think I'm he him. And I can tell you an anecdote. So I know somebody who, in my opinion, is obviously transgender. And I was in 3 situations where I was interacting with this person. Somebody else would enter the room, and the person who didn't know the person that I was interacting with would say, "Oh, I'm." They would assume that this person was male. They addressed them by him, he, him.
Yeah.
But she's a woman. She identifies as female. But when you see that person, and she's not trying to be who she's not. So this is a minor. So it's not somebody who has expressed any gender conflict. But when you see them walking down the street, you will immediately assume that they are male. And the embarrassment, I cannot tell you the embarrassment I felt and that person felt when everybody that walks into the room assumes they're male, but they identify. And like I say, this is not somebody who's expressed any.
No.
It's just, and that is what I think the push for gender neutral pronouns is trying to do. And I am 100% on board with that. And I don't think it's an imposition on you or I.
No. Okay. So then let's move it to external appearance, because you've just said that sometimes it's difficult to tell.
Yes.
Well, culturally, in our part of the world, the Western world, it's normal for women to improve their appearance and less normal for men to do that. I mean, I keep pretending that I go through makeup in order to get ready for the camera. It's a lie. I don't do that.
I do go through makeup, and I do hope it shows.
It's very nice, but why? Why do we do this? Why do women feel the need to beautify? Or why does our society impose that expectation on women, not on men?
Well, men do it differently. Men don't do it with makeup, and I think it's a cultural thing. And I don't know why in the Western culture it's only women who do it with makeup. I know the Maoris do it with tattoos, mostly for men. So the reasons are complicated. I don't pretend to have an answer to that. It will be very interesting to read up on that. But that is an imposition. And just by the way, I prefer not to go through makeup every day. I do, because when I don't, I just look 10 times older than I sometimes feel. And with gray hair, but that's a cultural thing. And my daughter has friends she's 23, she's at university. She has male friends who do their nails. They wear bright blue Q-tips on their nails. They do makeup. I mean, they put eyeliner on, they put mascara, and it's a trend I see more and more. And men have in the Western culture, men have a different expression. They also beautify themselves. I think it's a cultural phenomenon, and it manifests in Western culture in a particular way. And what is Western culture these days? I mean, Western culture basically took over the world. So, but I don't think that has to do. We've made an attachment to gender that I don't think should be there. For example, let's just go back 500 years or so, where, or longer, 1,000 years. It was perfectly acceptable before trousers were invented for men to wear robes. Everybody wore robes because that was what you wore. Now, men don't normally wear dresses or robes unless they are Bedouin or Hawaiian or Scottish. Yes. So I have no problem with anybody expressing their gender identity in any way that they feel comfortable with. And I don't think that their expression of their gender identity is an imposition on me. That's my position.
So can I do my Scotsman joke?
Yes, please do your Scotsman joke.
I think you've already heard it actually, but it's this cheeky woman approaches a Scotsman in a kilt, and she says to him, "Is anything worn under your kilt?" And he says, "Oh, no, it's all as good as new."
Can I do my Jewish joke? My sex joke, the old Jewish joke. Can I do that?
I'm sorry about the accent, by the way, Scots people. Some of whom are my friends.
I'm not even going to try. So my joke is it's an old Jewish joke, but it's applicable across the board. So this elderly couple, they've been married for 60 plus years, and they go to see the rabbi because the woman has finally confessed that she's never had an orgasm.
Ooh.
In their entire married life. She's never had an orgasm.
Very sad.
So she confesses to her husband, and she says maybe she'd like to experience it before she passes on. Yeah. So they go to see the rabbi, and the rabbi says, okay, so the best advice that he can offer at this late age and after so many years of marriage is that, do they know a trustworthy young man that they both feel comfortable with? Yes, no, they do. It's the pool guy. The pool that they have a young man that comes to clean their pool every week, and they come. So he says, all right, so what you do when you're ready, you engaging in the act, you get the pool guy with a towel, and he has to stand there with a towel and go like this over the woman's face. Oh, and then that will hopefully solve the problem. So they do that, and nothing happens. And they go back to the rabbi, and they say, well, nothing happened. So he says, okay, well, I do have a plan B. So my suggestion is that this time you do exactly the same, except that this time the husband stands with a towel and the pool boy does the job. And okay, so they listen to the rabbi, and that's exactly what they proceed to do. And after about 10 minutes, it's just fireworks. And the husband's standing there with the towel, and the pool boy is busy. And as it happens, the old guy is waving the towel over his wife's face, and he says to the pool guy, you see, that's how you should be waving a towel.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
But John, just about back to our thing about the sexes. You have two boys and two girls, so there's quite
Mm,
an age gap between the two boys
mm,
and the two girls. But
mm,
I was thinking about my kids growing up, and so my son and my daughter only differ by 15 months.
mhm,
And because I decided very early on that as far as gender identity and sexuality goes, that my kids have the freedom to sort that out. Although I will confess that my daughter was such a pretty little thing, and I'm a real girly type of person. And I
mhm,
wanted to, she was beautiful. Oh, she still is, but she had these curly blonde hair and big
mm,
blue eyes. And
mm,
I so wanted to dress her up in beautiful little dresses,
mm,
but she never would. She hated dresses.
mm. Yeah.
So from the moment that she
Mm,
could make up her own mind and tell me, I don't like what you've dressed me in,
mm,
I had to just give it up as a bad job.
yeah.
She would never. She does wear dresses now, but
Mm,
she doesn't like it. She's always preferred to go
mm,
in t-shirts and shorts and slacks.
mm,
However, um, my because my kids are only, they basically were raised like twins. So my son had access to all my daughter's toys, and my daughter had access to all her brother's toys. In fact, it was just everybody's toys.
mhm,
And there were some things that I found really, really interesting without any influence from my side. My son was always drawn to the guns and the
mm,
cars and the
mm,
trucks. And my
mm.
daughter, despite not wanting to wear dresses, and
Yeah.
despite she
Yeah.
didn't enjoy playing with dolls,
No.
she but she would prefer to play with soft toys. And funny enough, she's studying to be a veterinary surgeon, and
Mhm,
she would have animal soft toys, and she would wrap them in bandages and stick plasters on them and give them injections. But she was always the one, she never enjoyed playing with cars the way my son did.
mm,
And the one thing that sticks out in my memory that just showed me that there is a difference. There was a wild banana tree growing in our garden, and Donnie chopped it down, and so it has this soft, like, it's not a
yeah.
hard tree.
No, it's not
And
a proper tree. No.
yeah, and the kids were there, and my son said, oh daddy, I want to chop this tree as well. So part of it was lying on the ground. They
Mm,
were about 3 or 4, and Donnie said, all right, you can. And he gave him the axe, and immediately my son went into a stance,
yes.
legs wide apart, and he
Yes.
took this axe and he was wah wah, he went
Yes.
like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And his sister said, oh, I want to do it as well. And she's not, she's a strong girl. I mean, she's taller than I am. She's
Yes.
physically really, really strong.
Mm.
But she took the axe and she stood with her legs together, and she took the axe and she went,
Yeah. Do you know,
it was,
I want to come in here because I'm I videoed my younger daughter with an axe chopping stuff up in the garden recently. I'm not going to play it while we're streaming, but afterwards I'll show you this. And she was very masculine with it. But
well,
I also wanted to say, because you talked about favorite toys, and there was a monkey experiment, wasn't there, where they got a mixture of monkey children, infant monkeys, boys and girls, and the boys, allegedly, according to the experiment, the boys preferred to play with the cars, and the girls preferred to play with the cuddly toys, the
well,
dollies.
France, in
But
the last, sorry, John.
yes, yes, that has been somewhat discredited because it seems to have been a poorly controlled experiment. So I think the
Okay.
judge might be out on that at the moment.
Well, in the last interview with France de Waal that I watched just 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
um, he mentioned it's because it was about this book of his
yeah.
about gender expression.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that his own research showed that if you give a doll to, so these are captive primates, but
Yeah.
if you gave the girl and boy primates, if you gave them a doll, most of the female primates would that they would pick the doll up and they would cuddle it and they would nurture it. What the boy primates did, they would take the dolls apart.
Yes.
Not to see what was going on inside, and that is something I observed with my two elder children. So my daughter would be given as Christmas gifts and birthday presents, she would be given Barbie dolls, which she never played with. She never played with it either.
She pulled the arms off. Yes.
But my son loved playing with the Barbie dolls.
Oh.
And but what he loved to do, he would have war games. They would be fighting.
Oh yes, yes.
The Barbie dolls would be fighting, and he also he did take them apart. And but I'm qualifying this. It's not taking them apart to destroy. It's a different type of curiosity.
Yeah, yes.
And
yes.
if that is not an indication that there are gender differences, and that I don't think anybody denies that. I think that in conclusion, because I'm keeping an eye on the time, that my thinking about gender expression is we should have the same attitude that most of the world has about sexual preference. It does no harm whatsoever at all to me if somebody who has female genitalia. In fact, I probably don't even know what genitalia anybody has if I don't know them, unless they want to show me or tell me, which they're under no obligation to do. But if a person with female or male genitalia wants to express themselves as either of the opposite, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And if they want to be addressed as they, them, or he, him, or I will do as they ask, just like I will ask somebody, please don't call me Tanny, rather call me by my name, or refer to me as Mrs. du Plessis. Yes. And I think we should cultivate that as our way of
attitude. That's a good attitude. Tolerance, yes. And
yeah.
Keep your nose out of my business. That sort of attitude. Yeah. So James Googled Tanny, and it's a contemptuous term used to refer to a transgender person, especially a transgender woman or a cross-dresser.
Okay, is that Tanny as in Tannie?
Oh, no, I spelled it Tanny for him.
No. The one that I was called was Tannie. It's very Dutch. It's Afrikaans. Yeah. But I did not know that is. It's very interesting. I didn't know that.
That's according to
not know that. Thank
Google
you, James.
May be wrong.
Sorry?
Google may be wrong.
Yes. But I also learned something new. So yeah. That's I didn't know that, but the Tanny that I was called was just, it's like auntie,
yeah.
As in a not so young female person.
Well, we've got 1 minute left in which I want to say, because we talked about Chris French earlier, and yes. I want to announce that I'm staging an event in London, and it's Changing Minds in Changing Times 24. So it's last year we did it. That was 23. Now we're doing it again. It's the next version of it. It's at the China Exchange in London. And one of the speakers will be Chris French, who will be
fantastic.
Yes, he's agreed to come. And he will be telling us why we think up all these peculiarities, all these things like fear about what's under the bed.
Oh, and that Taylor Swift is a witch. So, okay, John, just in conclusion, I found this conversation really interesting. And I do hope that there was enough contention and enough disagreement between you and I to make for an interesting conversation, because contrary to what people might think, you and I don't agree on everything. And I like discussions where there's a little bit of disagreement. So you've made me think about some things. And I will continue to think about this, and maybe we can revisit the topic, because I do think with it's something that we need to talk about as a society.
Definitely.
And I hope I've given you some perspectives.
Definitely. Yes, indeed. You want to say a word about who's coming next week as our guest?
I will do so. It seems it's confirmed almost 99% that our guest next week will be former pastor Durante Lamar. You can check him out on Facebook. He has only recently come out as an atheist, and he is a very interesting chap to look out for on YouTube. Durante Lamar. It's spelled Daranta, and the surname is Lamar. And the reason we don't have a banner or anything is because it was confirmed literally seconds before we came onto the show. He made contact with me, so that will be an interesting conversation. And Durante sounds like James Earl Grey, so he has that voice quality. It's just brilliant. So yes,
you sold it to me. I'm looking forward to it already.
Well, so am I. I watched an interview that Durante did with my friend Dean Kruger from Atheist Republic Cape Town Consulate, and it will be good. So good. I hope to see everybody next week. Thank you, James. I couldn't read all your comments, because if I want to read your comments, I have to put on my glasses and come closer to the screen, because I am actually a Tani. Yes, believe it or not, and I just have to accept it.
Yeah.
Tani, Tani. Yeah. Not okay. Not that I would mind that slur, because I'm probably pro the transgender agenda. Some people will say I don't think there is a transgender agenda, but I'm if there is one, I don't have a problem with it. So on that note.
On that note, indeed. Yes. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Goodbye.